pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, and our hero veterans, let me welcome you to the Indiana War Memorial tribute presentation. My name is Christine Hoover. I am the daughter of William Ray Pruitt of the 307th Bombardment Group. He was the ball turret gunner on Pistol Packin' Mama with the Remy crew. I am now a 14-year member and current vice president of the 307th Association. Welcome. Let me first introduce Brigadier General Stuart Goodwin. General Goodwin has served as the executive director of the Indiana War Memorials Commission for the past 8 years. He is a retired U.S. Air Force general officer with over 37 years of leadership experience, including Assistant Adjutant General of the Indiana Air National Guard. General Goodwin.
Thank you. Well, welcome to our house. We're so glad that you're here, and it's really great to be with fellow Air Force people, Army Air Corps people before that. And you know what yesterday was, right? Yesterday was our birthday, September 18th, 1947, the National Defense Act, when we became the United States Air Force. Well, we're so happy that you're here, and it's my pleasure just to tell you a little bit about the building, because we're going to have some ceremonies here today, and then we're going to turn you loose downstairs. We have a 30,000 square foot museum in the basement of this building. And then if your travels allow, in the center of the city at the Circle, we have a 3,000 square foot museum that is dedicated solely to the Civil War. Well, this building was actually built after World War I. 1914 to 1918, the United States is involved in the last 19 months of the war. And during that time, when the war was taking place from 1914 to 1918, 15 million people died in this war. 8 million military and 7 million civilians. And it was known as what? The Great War, or also the war to end all wars. There would never be another war, is what they thought. Well, obviously, you guys can talk about that. You know that it didn't happen for you, and it sure isn't happening today for those of us that either served or just recently retired. But when the war was over, they took a look at the numbers here in Indiana, and what they found out that there was about 135,000 Hoosiers. And by the way, Hoosiers is not a derogatory term. We love being called Hoosiers. You know, some people think that means you're a hick or something like that. We don't look at it that way. We're proud to be Hoosiers. But there were 135,000 Hoosiers who served and a little over 3,000 that died. And so the legislature, to honor these folks, because there's never going to be any more war, they put aside $2.2 million and 2 city blocks to honor these people who fought in the last war we would ever have. Now, to put that into perspective, about $2.2 million, a gallon of milk costs 5 cents. I bought a gallon the other night, it was $3. So it gives you some idea of how much that would be today. And they built the building, and they spent every nickel of that $2.2 million on it. The outside of the building is made out of Indiana limestone, just like the Pentagon and a lot of the buildings in Washington, D.C., because that's something that we export here in Indiana. But the thing that is really unique about this building is the fact that the Allies, the people the United States fought with, was Belgium, Italy, Serbia, the United Kingdom, and France. The thing that makes this building really unique, and the stone on the interior of the building, the stone actually came from these 5 European countries, and they brought the stone and craftsmen here to build this building as a sense of community. They lived together, they fought together, and they died together, And so they wanted to build something to honor the last war we would ever be involved with. That's what's really cool about this building. The thing that's cool about this room is that this is why the building was built. This is called the Shrine Room. And so these 6 countries that we talked about, the United States and these 5 European countries, you see the commanders and field marshals on the west and the east walls. And then there were other countries who provided smaller numbers of military, and their flags are represented in the corners. The building is 210 feet tall. It's 420 feet square. And the thing that is really interesting about this building, it was designed after one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, Helicarnassus, which was the tomb of King Mausolus. In 366 BC, he served for 26 years in Asia Minor, which is what we call Turkey. And so King Mausolus, that's where he's buried, and that's where the word mausoleum comes from. This building looks very similar to that. Started in 1926. In 1927, General Blackjack Pershing, who led the Americans in the war, he actually came here on the 4th of July in 1927 and laid the cornerstone, and then it was dedicated on Armistice Day, which we now call Veterans Day, in November, in 1933. And so when you get up and you walk around, and we want you to take a look at some of the things here, and we're going to just briefly describe to you about what the room, the symbolism in the room, and it starts in the heavens. Up in the heavens with the Star of Destiny. The Star of Destiny was the symbol of our future in the 1920s and 1930s. Our star happens to be made out of Swedish crystal. And I've had several people ask me, well, what do you think that thing's worth? I mean, just to say the word Swedish crystal, it's more than I can afford. I can tell you that right now. I have no idea what the value of that would be. But what I do know that underneath that is the garrison flag, which is the largest flag that we fly over a military installation. Now, there are larger flags. You see them at the truck stops and football games and places like that. But the garrison flag, Garrison, by tradition, the garrison on an army post is where the headquarters is located. And by tradition, the largest flag and the tallest flag is always flown at the headquarters. This is not a tomb, but it's an altar. And it's called the altar of consecration. And when I want you to get up, and there's 2 steps there, so I don't want you to trip and fall, but I want you to go and I want you to look at the top of that altar when you get a chance, because you're going to see something that this lady just led us in, the Pledge of Allegiance. And you're going to note that it doesn't say one nation under God, and it doesn't say United States of America, because those things weren't added until later. This building, as I said, was dedicated in 1933. The final version of the Pledge of Allegiance as we know it today happened in 1954. The room is based on red, white, and blue. The columns you see are red, and red is in the flag for what? The blood that was shed, right? Okay, the columns came from Vermont, and if you look real close, they're hollow, and you can see the seams in them. The reason they're hollow is because we don't have any hydraulics or pneumatics at this point. We're going to have to do everything by hand, and so that's why they're made to be lighter. White is in the flag for purity, and the frieze, which is nothing more than a fancy word for mural, an artsy word for mural, the frieze tells the story of the war. On the north side is what we would call today pre-mobilization. We're getting ready to go to war. And on the south side is victory. And on the west and the east side is when they were actually fighting the war. The thing that I think is really cool about the frieze are the inscriptions. Because the inscriptions were written by a gentleman by the name of Real Cortez, and he's the same person who wrote the inscriptions on the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. And so those of us that are museum freaks, we like those connections, especially when it's something to do with the nation's capital. Blue, the stained glass windows, Rambush out of New York, famous stained glass manufacturer, and blue is in the flag for freedom. The doors on the north and the south side are made out of solid bronze, and each side weighs 5,000 pounds. And we have these big crowbars and a whole lot of WD-40 that we have to grease them up when we open them. We've only opened them up 2 or 3 times in the 8 years that I've been here, but we can't open them because there's a promenade that goes around the side. The stone that you're sitting on, the white stone, came from Tennessee. The green stone that's up here came from Italy. And so you'll see this different stone throughout the museum. Anyway, we have a lot to do here today and a lot of things to celebrate and a lot of things to commemorate. And so first of all, I just want to close by telling you this. I can't tell you how much I appreciate what you did. Because I can tell you in the 37 years that I wore the uniform, in the years that I was a commander, my last command had 2,000 people in it. And I can tell you that we spent a lot of time telling those young people about the great things that we're doing now with drones and with F-16s and with A-10s and the aircraft that we had in the Indiana Air National Guard. None of that stuff could have been done if you wouldn't have done what you did. That's what's important to remember. And I can tell you, and I have some of my staff here with me today, when we came here and we became the director, we started a rule. And the rule is that any time a World War II person comes into this building, we stop whatever we're doing and we go and talk to them. Because I do believe you are the greatest generation. And I believe as a history buff that there are 2 defining times in the history of our nation. One was the Civil War, the other was World War II. Either one of those don't go in the direction that they went, we're not sitting here or standing here today. And we're sure as heck not talking in English. So the things that you did are very, very important to our history. And what I would urge you to do, if you haven't done it, is to sit down with somebody with a tape recorder or a video camera and tell what you did. Because it's important for those generations that are coming behind us to know what's going on. And you know, unfortunately, what we're already seeing, and something that happened in World War II, is the fact that people are rewriting history. They're not telling the real story. I mean, how in the world can you possibly think that the Holocaust didn't happen? Well, we're within a couple years where nobody will be able to raise their sleeve and show you their numbers. And if they're already saying it while these people are around, how easy will it be in 20 years to say that it never happened? That's why we need to document that history, and your family members that come behind you, they need to know what you did. And I don't care if you were a cook, I don't care if you were a fighter pilot, I don't care what your job was, because everybody's service is honorable. And I get so tired of hearing people say, I was just this or I was just that. You did what only 1 out of 10 people who live in our great nation have done. 90% of the people who live in this country have no first-hand knowledge about what it means to serve. That's how important you are. And you must never forget that. Because as soon as you start to diminish what your service meant, then these people who don't have a clue about what it means to serve, they start thinking that way.